Hey guys, what's up? In today's video I want to talk a little bit about my microdiscectomy, which is a surgery that I had about 1 year ago. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is just because when I had that surgery ahead of me, I was really happy that there were videos out there on YouTube where people share their experiences and just, give yourself a little bit the feeling that you're not alone out there in what you're having. And I can tell you that you're really not alone with this kind of condition. Sciatica is now a mass phenomenon. The surgeon that I had said that he is performing this surgery, basically microdiscectomies, on 300 days a year. So you can see around 300 surgeries every year, only the surgeon. That means basically 5 days a week and sometimes also one on the weekend where he's performing these surgeries. So it's a mass phenomenon. And you're really not alone, and I feel your pain. But let's get into it. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to break this down in kind of 3 sections. First of all, the section how it happened, how I got to the point that I needed the surgery. Then the surgery itself, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then the recovery phase and where I'm now 1 year later. So I'm going to tag those timestamps down in the description, and you can click those. So if you only want to see, or hear the story of my recovery, then you can skip to that at a later point. But let's get into it. So how did all this happen? First of all, and this obviously is mostly interesting for people who have no problems with their back and who by coincidence just stumbled across this video. Let me tell you, be careful lifting things, because how this happened, obviously it builds up over years. I was always someone who sits a lot, who spends a lot of time sitting, who doesn't enjoy physical activity that much. But yeah, anyway, I always preferred sitting, so it builds up. And then there was this point when I went to collect some heavy stones with my father in Germany. And we lifted those stones into the car. They were kind of just about as heavy as you can lift, right? When you have an item and you try to lift it and you're like, I might be able to lift it, I might not. So I tried, and I must have lifted it the wrong way in that moment. And I felt like just a light pinch in my back, like in my lower back. Sometimes you have that. You lift something, you feel a bit of a discomfort in your back. And I didn't make much of it. We lifted those stones, put them in the car, drove off. Then I went on holiday, and during my 2 weeks holiday in Cyprus, I started to feel pain in my leg, right? I didn't connect the two things, that lifting the stone and the pain in the leg at first, but it's actually really, really interesting how those two things connect, and it made me look more into kind of nerve charts. If you type in like body nerve chart, you get a quite good idea of where in your spine the nerves in your leg originate. So if you squeeze the nerve in your spine, you get pain in your leg. So anyway, I came back from the holiday, I went to my doctor and kind of forced him to give me an MRI, which I did. And you could see that I had like a slightly bulging disc. It was basically clear that it was pushing on the nerve, and that was why I was experiencing the pain in my leg. Now, when looking at those MRI scans, those initial ones, it was just a very light bulge, and everyone was kind of reassuring me that I could use like physiotherapy to build up muscles in my spine or around my spine that would help to kind of push that bulging disc back into the spine, and it wouldn't be a problem. I started doing these daily exercises. To be honest, afterwards you always think, I could have done more exercises, but I felt like I did quite a lot, and I've done my kind of daily routine of exercises. But it didn't really help. So I started to take painkillers. I started to take gabapentin, which you might be familiar with if you're having the same condition. I took those. That helped me quite a bit. But the problem at that point, and this was dragging on for months and months, basically, it didn't go away, was that I always had a feeling of discomfort and pain in my leg. Whenever I'm sitting, in the beginning it was still fine when I was walking. I was walking through the park. I felt absolutely no pain. I felt that walking was really good. But whenever I was sitting down, I immediately felt a discomfort. And I always describe it as, when you try to stretch your leg and you kind of make your leg straight and bend forward to hit your toes with your hand, right? You feel this kind of stretchy feeling in your leg, right? Where you just feel like you're stretching as far as you can. And it's a bit of a discomfort, pain feel in your leg. And I had that feeling, that stretchy feeling all the time, right? That's kind of how it felt. Other people describe sciatica pain as like shooting pains down the leg. I didn't have that so much. For me, it was just a constant feeling of you're stretching your leg. It's not comfortable. So you move around on your chair and you can't find a comfortable position. It really was absolutely horrible. And that dragged on for, I don't know, 10 months or something like that, where I did my exercises, but always had the pain, didn't get better, take more medication. I started taking more painkillers. I found a way to live with this back issue. It was annoying that I took so much medication and I wanted to do something about it. I didn't really consider surgery at that point. I just tried to live with it as good as I can. And then one morning I lifted my son. At that time he was like around, I don't know, 10 kilos, 11 kilos. So I lifted him, probably again wrong. And that just crushed my spine. It felt like someone hacked an axe right into my spine. And I was standing there in the bathroom in the morning getting ready for work with him on my arm. And I wanted to collapse to the floor because of the pain, but I was holding him and I just couldn't get to the ground. And it was a horrible situation. Anyway, as you can imagine, I was screaming in agony in that moment. It was very painful. My wife came, took the kid away, and from then on, I basically laid on the floor for 5 days. I could not even lay on a couch. I slept on the floor because the slightest unevenness in a surface, so even a couch where, whatever, your back is like slightly angled towards your bum and stuff, even that was an unbearable pain at that point, right? I could only lay there. I started taking 4 or 5 pills every 6 hours, and I was literally counting the hours. So you're like, oh God, 3 more hours until I can take my painkillers. It was terrible. I contacted then a professional spine surgeon here in London. I was so lucky, but I was very, very happy that I had my private insurance at that point, and that I could contact someone because I literally couldn't move. It was so terrible. So I contacted this surgeon, professional spine surgeon, and got another MRI scan done. So I dragged myself in agony. After a few days, after a week or two, it was kind of manageable with painkillers that I slowly just walk around. It can't really be described as walking. It was more just like limping. But I was able to get another more high-res MRI scan done. And I want to show you just a few little images. Obviously, I don't want to share my medical history here, but you can see here in this image that these are the results of that scan, by the way, that the disc is not only a little bit prolapsing there, it's literally coming out and bending down, right? So that explained the pain, and the surgeon said at that point, we need to take that piece out. It is so heavily pushing on the nerves now that it will not be able, your body will not be able to compensate just with medication or physical exercise. It's time for a surgery. And at that point, I did decide to have the surgery. Again, lucky enough, it was only like a 2-week window that I had to wait, I think, until I had the surgery, which I was very happy about, because you don't want to wait if you're in so much pain. Obviously, you're worried. A spine surgery is always something, that concerns the person who's affected. But the truth is, this is a fairly standard procedure. It is done with a keyhole surgery, at least in my case. So they literally go in through 2 tiny holes with 2 tiny rods, and one is more like a knife, and the other one is a light and like a little hoover, basically, that can suck out pieces. So I looked into it beforehand, but obviously you drive yourself crazy and you're not even sure it's going to help. You just kind of hope. I think at this point it's important to mention that it's very crucial to find a surgeon that at least somehow feels right. I mean, I know that in many countries you can't choose. You just have to take what you get, basically. But I met one surgeon before, and like I said, due to my private insurance, I could call them up and say, look, dudes, I'm not entirely sure. Can I just get like a second opinion? And I met another one, and he was kind of much more what I had in mind. And after all, it turned out to be a good decision, I think. So on the day of the surgery, you obviously can't eat the day before or whatever. You arrive at like 6 in the morning, and then you wait, and they get you ready for that surgery. All the, these kind of memories are kind of hazy because you're nervous and full of adrenaline, and I don't know. It's kind of an extreme situation when you're actually there, but I don't want to scare you. It's all good. Like I said, it is actually a little bit more of a standard procedure than it is like a surgery where you're really at risk. Because in the beginning, when you hear, oh, we're going to have a spine surgery, everyone thinks about being disabled and never being able to walk again. And what if they cut the wrong nerve? And, these things, obviously, I'm not saying there's no risk. I'm not a surgeon. I can't really evaluate the risk, but it is extremely, extremely low, and I'm pretty sure you will be fine. The only question in regard to the surgery is, to what extent will it relieve your pain, right? To what extent will it make you feel better? So on the day of the surgery, basically what happened, you just arrive and then they put you on these anesthetics. They put you in the theater, and that's always weird. You have to put on these clothes, right? And you just feel like you're getting ready for an execution nearly. It's really odd. You put a gown on and you get like a hairnet, and then they escort you to this surgery theater, and you walk down long, very sterile corridors. And it's just a situation, if you're not used to it, it's a bit odd, but don't be intimidated by it. It's totally fine. You then lay down, and most of the time people, it's an everyday job for them, right? They do this every day, so you can feel safe in their hands. At least that's the feeling I had. You then get the anesthetics and you're knocked out. In my case, I woke up and I thought I'm gonna die. Literally, I felt so bad. I didn't feel pain in my back, but I felt like I wanted to vomit, and I had, I think, the biggest thirst in my life. So I woke up and there was this nurse next to me, and I was like, dude, give me some water. And she's like, no, you're not allowed to have water now, and you will puke it out. And I was like, no, dude, I need water right now, otherwise I will go to the sink and get some. And she's like, all right, gives me some water. As promised, I puked it out instantly, and it turns out later that was because of the morphines they give you. And if you're not used to taking morphines, they can actually make you vomit. The problem in my case was that the surgery was actually more problematic than expected. The surgeon described it in a way that during the surgery you lay on your tummy, obviously, so they can access your spine. And then he said he was expecting the bulging disc to be kind of on the top. If you imagine you go into that back, you're on the top to you, so you can cut it off and remove it. But after he went in, he realized it's kind of underneath, so he had to adapt to that on the fly, and it was like a much more tricky procedure to nearly cut that meat, that disc, part of the disc out. And it sounds horrible to describe that, but obviously this is all stuff you never feel, you never see any of this. It's just what people tell you. Also, another thing is what he said is like he was surprised that I could even still walk because the disc was so crushed and the nerve was so squished that he thought it wouldn't be possible with that kind of condition to even walk. I think it was probably the painkillers and all the medication that I took at this point that just kept me going somehow. So it was quite severe. He also said that normally the meat that you cut from the disc, and this is like a horrible comparison, but that's the words he used. Normally the meat is like crab meat, so it's very soft and tender, and you can cut it and remove it quite easily, and you can be quite precise. The meat in my case was already hardened, so it was much harder to cut it. Probably, I don't know, like if you squash this kind of tissue, it hardens up like a scar would, probably in a similar way. That's just me assuming stuff, but he said it was hardened and was harder to remove that piece. So that led to the surgery, instead of 2 hours, actually taking 4 hours. And that also led to me getting extremely high doses of morphine and just like tranquilizer to keep me knocked out. And that's why I felt so horrible when I woke up. I was basically just pumped up with all kinds of, I don't even want to know, horse tranquilizers. Who knows? So then they brought me back to my room. And as dazed as I was, I didn't really have a sense of time or anything at that point. I just signaled to my wife that I'm somehow all right. And then fairly short time after I was back in my room, they tried to make me walk already, which was interesting. I read about this beforehand, but that was actually the first time when I felt the spine and the back, because they're like, all right, we're going to try to get up now. And you put your legs down from the bed, and then you try to lift your torso up, right? And that's the first time you put weight on your spine, and despite all the painkillers and the morphine, it hurt, right? And I was like, all right, okay, I see what we're dealing with here. So I was expecting to stay in hospital for maybe a day before I had the surgery. That's what I read. You stay there and you go home. That's what my surgeon said as well. Because it was quite severe, I think I stayed 3 or 4 days. I'm not entirely sure. So I stayed those days and just recovered. And I had a little button that I could push for morphine and all that went straight into my vein, at least for the first 2 days. But I didn't really feel that I needed it. It wasn't that painful. Obviously, you're on a quite tight regimen of like painkillers, and other things that make your life easier. But it didn't feel like I was really in a lot of pain during my time in the hospital. I could walk around slowly, obviously. I just felt impaired, right? You can't move fast at all. You just feel like you're like a 90-year-old man would need to move. You're very impaired. You're very slow in your movement and uncertain, and you're very scared that you'd make a wrong move that would give you pain. So then you get like little lessons. They teach you how you should walk stairs, at least in the first few weeks. So that was kind of the surgery. It all wasn't that bad. It was fine. And then the road to recovery. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that's quite interesting. Right after the surgery, the pain in my leg was gone. And it was, a revelation. It really was. It was incredible. Like after 1 year of having that pain permanently all the time, for it to be gone was amazing. However, I did feel severe pain in my foot, in my right foot, and you need to know this was my right leg as well. So I spoke to the surgeon about it, and basically the way he explained it to me is because they had to move the nerve aside in order to get to the spine and to the disc. So what happens is you pull the nerve, and the pain manifests itself in that case in the end of the nerve, because you pull it through the whole leg, and the end of the nerve, that's where the pain manifests. And if you look at these nerve charts, you can see that from this L4-L5 disc, basically, the nerve endings go exactly to the big toe. And that's where I had the pain. So right after the surgery, it was quite severe. I was really worried because I couldn't even walk properly. I had this pain in my foot unless I was wearing slippers, house shoes. That made it a bit better. It felt much more comfortable to wear socks, to walk around. But I have to be honest with you, at that point I was just so happy that the pain in my leg was gone that I was even delighted to have a little bit of pain in my foot. Obviously I wasn't happy about it, and I was a bit concerned, but I was happy that the main pain was gone. The doctor reassured me that the pain in my foot would fade and would go away. Reason for that being is that nerves need to recover, right? They need to rebuild. And what he said, they recover at roughly 1 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter a day. So they need to grow back from the stem, which is basically in your spine, and they need to grow with 0.5 millimeter a day through your whole leg down until they reach the toe, and only then they can start the recovery process. If you break that distance down and you would need to travel at 0.5 millimeter a day, it takes roughly 3 years. Now I'm 1 year post-surgery. The first few months I was very, very scared in handling, lifting anything. Obviously I was also advised to not lift anything, so I was very, very careful. Even like lifting a full kettle of water, I was like using both hands and standing straight. Surely this procedure, this surgery, makes you reflect on how you lift things much more. But then after the first 3, 4, 5 months, you start to feel better, and you start to feel more confident about your back. Right now, 1 year post-surgery, or actually I think it's like 1 year and 2-3 months or something, I feel much better about my spine. Lifting things, I'm much more confident in lifting things. I'm always very, very careful, and I wouldn't lift, let's say, a big crate of water, something that's just very heavy. I still don't do that. I refuse to do it. But, groceries or anything that can get a little bit heavier, even my son, who's now at 13, 14 kilos or something, I confidently lift him. I'm careful that I always go down in my knees and lift with my legs and all that. But it's not that I'm fully recovered. You have to be aware that when you had a surgery like this, this will permanently affect your body, right? It will affect how your body feels. So I'm not in pain right now. My foot is much better. It's still I can still feel it, and I still prefer to wear slippers, to be honest. It's more comfortable to walk with slippers. I always describe it as if you would have a small sock or like a piece of tissue inside your shoe. That's kind of how it feels. So there's no pain, but you just have this thing that always feels like it's under your big toe on the right foot. That's always there, and you have to kind of live with it. And the truth is, most of the time you blend it out. You don't notice it at all. If I sleep in very wrong positions, or if I sit the whole day for like 3-4 days in a row, then I can feel my spine being weird. I'm not saying it's painful, because it's not really, but it gets kind of stiff, and it doesn't feel like, like comfortable, that I'm comfortable in moving. So it is quite crucial that you move a lot post-surgery as soon as you can, and that you don't sit all day. Sitting or standing, for that matter, both of these things for very long periods of time is not very good. But standing is still better. But sitting and laying down for very long periods of time over several days, is something that I can still feel, and it creates discomfort in my spine. But it's not a problem. I can counter that by simply moving more and making sure that I keep my spine busy, basically, that I keep my spine in motion, and then it's absolutely fine. So one big question that comes up a lot is physiotherapy or no physiotherapy. Obviously, when you meet your physiotherapist after the surgery, they're gonna try to put you on a regular program. The truth of the matter is, and that's something that my surgeon told me, if you don't experience pain, literally pain where you're like, oh, the pain in my back or in my leg is not gone, right? Then you should do physiotherapy to counter that pain, to do something against that. If you don't really experience pain post-surgery, except the surgical pain, obviously, and that goes away, then he said it's fine. Then you shouldn't do physiotherapy, because it can actually cause more harm, especially in the first 3 months, than it can help. So I didn't do any physiotherapy. I just started swimming, carefully swimming after 3 months, and I keep doing that. And I try to get up more. I got a standing desk at work and all that jazz. So I just have to say that this microdiscectomy surgery was a blessing for me. To imagine that I would have to live for the rest of my life with that severe pain and that crushed disc in my spine is a nightmare, and that was a really, really big concern. The fact that I now have a little bit of discomfort on my toe is not great, but I'm pretty sure it will improve further and it will get better, and it's absolutely something I can live with, versus the back and leg pain that I had before is something I didn't really want to live with. It was terrible. So guys, this is kind of my unfiltered experience. This is what happened to me. I didn't curate this video in a way that I try to make you hopeful or give you good vibes or be positive about the surgery. It's a tricky surgery, but I've given you my unfiltered and authentic, real experience. So make of it whatever you want. I hope it helped you a little bit. If you have the surgery ahead of you, I really wish you all the best. I'm sure it's going to be fine. Like I said, it's not a crazy surgery that bears these enormous risks like maybe other spine surgeries would. So I wish you all the best. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you kind of liked it. And please leave a like. You can subscribe to the channel as well. I normally do more like video game content, commentaries and let's plays and stuff. But every now and then I do a review or I do a video like this, whatever comes to mind. So if you have any questions in regard to the procedure, because there are so many things I couldn't mention in this video and it's already way too long, then just leave those down in the comment section below. I'm going to take my time, go through them, and give you the best answers to my abilities, obviously. If you enjoyed the video, then please share it or let people know that you enjoyed it. Leave a comment, leave a like, do all the good stuff. All right, I'm done now, guys. I hope it helped you. Take care, and I'll see you next time. I'm out.